Welcome to this edition of AARP Massachusetts Fraud Talk Tuesdays. We are here the second Tuesday of each month from 12 to 12:30 discussing a different scam and how you can protect yourself and your family from becoming a victim. So please mark your calendars. My name is Sam Doknovich. I'm a volunteer with the AARP Massachusetts Speakers Bureau. Our guest today is Jim Carney, who is also a volunteer with the AARP Massachusetts Speakers Bureau. The information in today's Fraud Talk Tuesday will help you stay connected and protected while using the internet, which all of us do daily. We'll explain how our data is bought and sold in an online place, which you may have already heard of, known as the dark web. We'll also talk about how to use public Wi-Fi safely when we are shopping, out to dinner, or traveling. Lastly, we'll share tips on how we can protect ourselves from identity theft and fraud. You may have joined us today with questions already in mind. If you have them, please put them into the Q&A at the bottom of the screen. If questions come up during the presentation, you can also put them into the Q&A. This session is being recorded. You'll receive a copy of this recording that you can share with your family and friends, and we highly encourage that. We want to protect everybody. At the end of the presentation, we will share a page with links to a number of resources that you'll also find very helpful. So Jim, where do we start?
Well, good afternoon, everyone. We are online more than ever. We connect with family and friends on social media. We work online and play online. We shop online for everything from coffee creamer to cars. Many of us do some of our financial transactions online. And the pandemic has amped up the amount of time most of us spend online. At the same time, we are constantly hearing of yet another major data breach in which our personal and sensitive information is compromised. According to the Federal Trade Commission, the Consumer Protection Agency, this is on the rise. But all is not lost. There are things we can do to protect our identities, and there are things we can do if our data is already out there to protect against identity fraud. Let's start with data breaches. These are security incidents when sensitive, protected, or confidential data has been viewed, stolen, or used by individuals unauthorized to do so. This can mean your credit card number has been stolen, or your passwords, or your health records, or your personal contact information, even your social security number. Frank Abagnale, whose story was recounted in the movie Catch Me If You Can, is an ambassador with AARP. He says that data breaches occur when someone doesn't do their job to secure the data the company is storing, and hackers just sit and wait for that to happen. Have you ever gotten a letter that starts out along the lines of, "We regret to inform you that your personal data may have been compromised due to a data breach"? I know, I've gotten a number of those. These go back many years. Yahoo, Target, Home Depot, Health Insurance Company, Anthem, Equifax, Capital One, and more have all had data breaches. Of course, thieves stole personal data before there was an internet, and they still steal data offline. They go through people's trash and recycling. They steal purses and wallets. They steal incoming mail from unlocked mailboxes. But now that so much of our data is online, we're that much more at risk of identity theft.
Jim, probably many people have heard the terms identity theft and identity fraud, and they might think they're the same thing. Are they the same thing? Can you explain the differences between the two?
Sure, and I'm glad you asked that. There is a difference between identity theft and identity fraud. With identity theft, your data has been compromised. It doesn't mean that your data has been used, at least not yet. Identity fraud occurs when your compromised information has actually been used. For example, it is fraud when someone opens up a credit line in your name or withdraws funds from your bank account. Much of the data that is stolen in data breaches and by other means ends up being bought and sold between criminals.
Well, that's really scary. So where is this stolen data bought and sold? I mean, many people, including myself, have heard about this taking place on the dark web, but we don't really know what the dark web is. Can you explain to our audience what the dark web is and what they can do to protect themselves?
Yes, even if you've heard about the dark web, you may not really know what it's all about. So let's talk about this for a minute. The internet is like an ocean. The top is the surface web, which is made up of public websites we all use, where sites like Google, Amazon, Facebook, and Yahoo are found. You might be surprised to learn that the surface web represents only an estimated 4% of web content. You go a little deeper and you encounter the deep web, which is comprised of places on the internet that aren't searchable. You need an authorized password to get the data in the deep web. The majority of the deep web is made up of databases which can be accessed securely over the open web or the surface web. For example, databases associated with hotel bookings, online purchases, medical records, banking, and others. The content can only be read by authorized people, such as employees, and is protected using passwords. This level is estimated to represent about 90% of web content. And then there's the dark web, which is deep below. And this is accessible only by using special software that is free and available to anyone who wishes to download it on their computer at their own risk. The dark web is perfect for preserving anonymity for political dissidents, journalists, spies, and as it turns out, criminals. It's estimated to represent around 6% of web content. Criminals have flocked to the dark web, attracted by its unique ability to facilitate the buying and selling of illicit goods and services with total anonymity. And a big dark web market exists to buy and sell stolen digital goods like credit card numbers, logins and passwords, social security numbers, and more. What we've learned from hackers is that the highest dollar profiles on the dark web are those of older adults because most seniors don't check their accounts online.
Wow. All of this is really pretty alarming. People always think of the internet and the benefits they get from using the internet, and they don't really realize that the internet is also exposing us to additional risks and threats that we didn't have before. Are there steps that we can take to protect ourselves? If I was going to start and make a ID protection checklist, what should be the major top priority items on it?
Okay, well, I'll go over the top ones. And they include freezing your credit, monitor your financial accounts online, use unique passwords and a password manager, and using VPNs to be safe on public Wi-Fi. And number one, freeze your credit. So we'll take a little bit of a deeper look at these. Thinking about placing a security freeze on your credit with the three major credit reporting agencies. They are Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. It's the best way to stop ID thieves from opening new accounts in your name. That includes credit cards, loans, utility accounts, or anything that requires a credit check. It is free to freeze your credit, and you can unfreeze it when you are applying for a loan and then refreeze it. You must do it for all three agencies. And again, if you have a freeze on your account, it means that you cannot open any new accounts. The other option is a credit alert. It simply alerts you that someone is inquiring about your credit. You just need to do it for one credit bureau, and they pass this to the other two. It lasts for 1 year unless you have filed a fraud report with the police or FTC. Then it lasts for 7 years. We'll send you a slide at the end of this presentation to a number of resources, including credit freezes and alerts. Number two, monitor your accounts. It's vital to have online access to all your important bank accounts, credit cards, and retirement accounts, and to check them frequently. There are really two reasons to have online account access. First, it enables you to review account activity as frequently as you want and not have to wait for a monthly or quarterly statement to discover something is amiss. Also, if you don't have online access to your accounts, hackers can find a way to set up that access, pretending to be you, and drain your accounts. You can set up access online through your financial institution's website, but it's even safer to install the financial institution's app since they come with more encryption mechanisms.
And Jim, so I guess the days of your password being 12345 or password are definitely over. Do you have any specific suggestions about best practices for passwords and password management?
Yes, and you're right. We don't use such simple passwords that are easy to guess. A lot of us tend to use the same passwords for more than one account. I think we're all starting to get that this is not a safe practice, but it's hard to remember so many passwords. You could have strong and different passwords for each online account, write them down and store them safely. Or you could use what's called a password manager. This is an app that stores your password securely in an online vault. You never lose another password. They generate complex passwords for each account, and some may notify you of data breaches at companies you have accounts with. All you have to remember is one master password to get into your password manager, and then all of your information will be available to you. If you have access to PC Magazine or Consumer Reports, you can do some reading to find out which are rated highly. Names of some of the better known password managers are 1Pass, Dashlane, Bitwarden, and LastPass. Finally, let's talk about being safe on public Wi-Fi and how VPNs work. Public Wi-Fi is a treasure trove for hackers to access and steal our personal or sensitive information. Even if you have to supply a password provided by the establishment to access public Wi-Fi, it still isn't safe. And again, you know, if there is a password, they're giving this password to a lot of different people. If you occasionally use public Wi-Fi, stick to safe activities like surfing the web, reading news, or checking the weather. Avoid any transactions involving entering passwords like for social media or email, etc., or financial activity like shopping, banking, and so on. If you access public Wi-Fi more than occasionally, look into installing a virtual private network or a VPN, which will help protect your data. Some are free, but you know you get what you pay for. They can be slow and they can bombard you with ads and may even share your data with advertisers. When considering a VPN, read the fine print to find one that does not collect or log your activity. As with password managers, you can learn about VPNs from resources like Consumer Reports or PC Magazine. Some common providers are Norton, IPVanish, and CyberGhost.
This is really great information, Jim. I think people can really probably feel a little bit more safe about being connected and protected. So thanks for that great information. Is there any happy news that you can leave us with? Talked a lot about threats and everything, but leave us with some happy news.
Okay, yes, that's always a good way to end. Believe it or not, there can be a happy ending to the story. Despite the undeniable reality that there are more data breaches and more fraud victims than ever before, the vast majority of U.S. adults do not experience identity fraud as compared to identity theft.
Hey, Jim,
And
you
there's
mentioned
also, there's also the fact that I think more of us are becoming aware and protecting ourselves better.
Hey, Jim, you mentioned that you had some other resources that would be available to our attendees. So can you share those?
Yes, we're sharing a slide right now that has some resources, and this will be sent to you with the links along with the recording of this presentation. The first is a link to an article from AARP on how, when, and why to check or freeze your credit. The second is a link to identitytheft.gov from the Federal Trade Commission that provides the links to the 3 credit bureaus and their phone numbers. The third is a link to the AARP Fraud Watch Network. I encourage all of you to visit AARP's Fraud Watch Network. It's free to everyone. You don't have to be a member. In addition to free information and resources online, you can sign up for free watchdog alerts that you can receive by email or text every 2 weeks. The alerts will keep you up to date on the latest ways criminals are targeting victims. Also on the Fraud Watch Network site, you can find out what to do if you or someone you know has been victimized. If you're unsure of something, or if you've been victimized by a scammer, you can call the Fraud Watch Network helpline at 877-908-3360. Staff and volunteers are there to help. They can help you on what to do next to keep you and your identity safe. And here's a link to the register for a virtual fraud support group. If you or a loved one has been victimized, these groups can help you overcome the emotional trauma you are experiencing. And it is traumatic to be victimized. And finally, although AARP does not endorse any of these products, they did quote in an article information from PC Magazine some of the more popular password managers and VPN providers. Do your own research before making a buying decision.
Thanks, Jim, for all of this really valuable information. I'm sure people now can feel that they can stay connected and protected so they can use the internet and all the benefits and not be exposed to some of the threats and the risks, as you pointed out. So thanks again. AARP encourages all the attendees to share the recording and the resource slides with families and friends. Information and awareness and education, as Jim said, is our best defense to avoid scams. So please spread the word. And then you can also tune in next month on the second Tuesday, which is November 14th, for the next Fraud Talk. And the next Fraud Talk will be very good for people who are getting out there and ready to start celebrating the holiday season with some holiday shopping. Because our topic is, it's shopping season. Beware of these scams. So thank you for joining us today. And remember, you can protect yourself.
And we have a few questions, Sam. One person's asked, did you say that I can freeze my credit, that it expires in a year? If you freeze your credit, it stays frozen until you actually unfreeze it. And you must do it with all 3 credit bureaus. You must freeze it with all 3, and then you must unlock it with all 3. A credit alert only lasts for a year unless you have reported it to the police department, and then it can extend up to 7 years. Somebody else just had a question. It says, you talked about not using a public internet for personal searching. What about using your phone that has a 5G? Is that okay to use? No, that one escapes me. I would imagine if you're using your phone to search, you're accessing the web. And I assume that I can't be sure of this, but I'm making the assumption here that if you're using your phone to search the web, you're susceptible to the same vulnerability as you would on a PC. So I would be careful. I would use a VPN if you're searching specific non-generic data, if you're looking at bank accounts and those types of things. If you're just searching the web for just general information, that should be okay. That came from Mary. Somebody asked also about freezing your children's credit. When a child is born, before they leave the hospital, paperwork is completed to begin getting them a social security number. And that social security number stays there until they start to need it. I mean, no one checks on it. And the first time you're probably going to need it if you're, I got it when I started working on the farm at 14. I started to pay Social Security. And so that was when I first knew about somebody using my Social Security number. I would suggest that you should think about freezing your children and tell your kids about their, your grandkids, that freezing their credit is until they actually need it is probably a good idea, because it can go 14 years without anybody checking. And what they do is they grab some of this information, the name, the Social Security number, and they create what they call a synthetic identity using parts of information from the real person and other people. And that can be used to create fraud. So you might want to think about freezing your children's credit until they actually need it. It's important to make sure that when you do this, you keep all the records of the passwords to get back in and unfreeze it.
And we had another question come through on freezing your credit. The question is, if I've frozen my credit with all three agencies, do I also need to freeze my spouse's credit?
I would think yes. Remember, it's based on Social Security number. And that can be the scary part of freezing your credit. I've frozen my credit. And when I logged on to the site, one of the first things they need to identify you is your Social Security number. When you do that, I would be very careful. When we send you the slides, click on the links that are in the slide to go to those three credit bureaus. If you simply Google Experian credit freeze, I'm guessing that the first couple entries you come up will be actually advertisements and not for the actual Experian, TransUnion, or Equifax website. So you need to be very careful when you go in and look at and access one of those sites. And so we encourage you to use the links on the slide that we're going to send you.
And just remember, I'll add my own personal use of freezing my credit. Make sure you remember to unfreeze it when you go to buy a new car and you apply for a car loan. I forgot to do that. And then of course I had to go and unfreeze it because you can't do a credit check. So, and when you unfreeze your credit, you can either unfreeze it for forever until you freeze it again, or you can set a specific number of days. So if you're in the middle of buying a car and it's going to take you 3 or 4 days, you can just unfreeze your credit for a week, and then it'll automatically go back into the state of being frozen.
I lost a 10% discount when I bought my new laptop when I went to Best Buy, and they said, "Oh, we can take 10% off if we open up your credit card with us, and then you can just cancel it." And I said, "Can't do that because I have frozen my credit." Let's see. There's other questions, and we have a couple other questions in here about freezing credit. What about?
If we do similarly,
what about deceased relatives? Somebody said freezing their credit. When my mother passed away, I checked with the funeral home and asked them, who do you notify? And they notify the Social Security, Social Security Administration to, I guess, void that Social Security number. I don't know if that's enough, but we're going to have to explore that and probably put it into a new Fraud Talk Tuesday presentation. So I really don't know the answers to that question. And let's see. I just want to reiterate one more thing about the about when you actually go out and Google and do the search for any of these credit bureaus or anything that you're doing online. When you Google anything, the first 3, 4, sometimes 5 entries that come up are going to have the word ad or sponsor next to them. That is not what you're looking for. As a matter of fact, when I go in and Google AARP Fraud Watch Network, the first 3 or 4 entries is not for AARP Fraud Watch Network, but something else. So when you Google anything, be careful and not to just automatically click. That's what got me in trouble probably 9 years ago. And I was a victim of fraud by doing that before I knew anything about fraud. Let's see, any other questions here? Let's see. No, I think that's what we have for questions. I think Jim, you covered everything pretty well, and I think you gave people a lot of information to think about. And as Sam said, you're going to receive a copy of the recording, and you will receive a slide with the resources on them that you can click. So until next month, on the second Tuesday of the month, when, as Sam said, we'll be discussing holiday scams, and there are lots of them out there. We wish everyone to be safe, and thanks for joining us.
Yes, and thank you all.
Bye-bye.